And with that, we get our first question. So your choice is, do you want to go east to the mountains, the Murray Mountains? Do you want to go north to the wild? Or do you want to go west? Do you want to go west to the mountains, north to the wild, or east to Nerlaith, the city? I am getting no answer. I am inclined to go for the wilds. Wilds are good. Insofar that we don't get any other answers, I suppose that's where we'll go. So you watch as the figure turns with you, looking in all of the different directions, and faces north again. Having come from south, it just begins walking forward again. Straight line from where it came from. You begin to follow it, and you realize that you luckily don't have to worry about all these metallic pieces jutting out. If you had to, you could be sure that if you didn't have those metal feet that this creature or person has, this figure, you would be cutting up your legs at all angles. You just look down at the razor things, and they're so sharp that as you move your hand between them, your ethereal hand just kind of gets cut barely and then reforms, like fog into your hand again. And so you trek. And you realize just how far it actually is. You could see it, for some reason your eyesight being enhanced, but as you trek, it feels like hours and then days pass by traveling. Just continue traveling, and you're lucky you don't get tired, because this figure doesn't seem to get tired either, as it just keeps walking, day for day. You have no semblance of time. The storm clouds that are overhead never seem to leave. It's just perpetually stormy. It's always raining. The thunder and lightning just always crackling. Partway through, you see various different forms of life here. Looking up at one point, on one of the days, you see this figure. It's like a wyvern of kind. This dragon form, these large wings with 2 feet and a huge serpentine tail as it goes gliding through the air. And as it glides a bit close, you see as the metal figure stops and kind of hunkers down a bit. And as they hunker down, they kind of put their arms together and their head in, and looking towards them, they look like a boulder, essentially. Not that there's many boulders around here in these fields, but they don't look distinguishable from pretty much any of the other metallic pieces that you've seen around here. And then you wait. You take the time to look around a bit more. You look into one of these tar pits because you have the time, and you kind of put your hand in just to see, and you put your finger in, and you feel this sludging. And thankfully you have no problem tugging your finger out again, but as you pull it, it kind of leaves an imprint of where your finger was before kind of the sludge kind of together again. And it just left this kind of suctioning sound as you pulled your hand from the tar pit again. Another hour or two goes by, and you watch as the wyvern circles and flies off in a different direction again through the storm clouds, leaves upward into the clouds itself. And you watch as the figure, hunched up into a boulder, takes a bit more time. And after a little while, being sure that it's gone, kind of lifts its head, looks up a bit, turns the visor a bit, gets up again, begins walking. Forward. For many days. And then eventually, you see the actual forest. this time not enhanced by some vision or anything of the sort. This time it is imminently before you, and at the very beginning is some trees. Normally sized, you feel like. But very shortly past this point where the trees just grow normally, you see many grow spectacularly large and extremely densely together. As ahead of you, it begins as a normal forest and then just becomes this dense jungle. As you walk up to the first trees together, the figure kind of stopping at the edge of the forest, look at the trees and made entirely of metal. It's like the trunk of the tree is not one piece. It's not as you expect it to look for a tree. It's like multiple like pipes formed together into this natural forming twisting piece, like bonsai in some ways, like this huge gnarled bonsai with wires kind of pulled across it in different regards. And it's, as it reaches the top, you see as the pipes kind of lead outward, and sprouting from it, from the openings of these from the pipes, they have these little holes in the sides, and sprouting out from those you see these metallic shimmering emerald green leaves. The figure hasn't kept moving it, and so you climb up one of them and you look on the inside, and it is very strange to be up here. You see as the leaves have a very specific kind of funneling form, and as the rain drops on the leaves, they sway slightly, and then the water is funneled down into the center of the pipe. And you see in the center of the pipe, it is indeed hollow as the water kind of goes rolling down it. It's like it has no earth. This entire thing exists to funnel the water downward and past any of the other leaves, as just barely at the base of the leaves, interestingly enough, you see this like metallic little root system, which is on the inside of the pipes. It's like the pipe is hollow, and with all of the little holes you have the leaves growing out. At the base of the leaves are little roots. It's like that's an entire plant on its own. It's not connected to this base of this pipe tree in any way. It's just kind of laying in there. And as the water goes past, the roots kind of shift a little bit in this small torrent of water that goes down the pipe. And as you look down the pipe, you see it just barely as it goes down into a secondary pipe before it goes into the main area of the trunk. The main larger pipes that wind downward until they reach the pipe root systems and go down into the ground. It's like a hydroponic system. The entire thing has no earth. Each of these tiny single leaf plants get its nourishment from the water that falls onto them and then gets funneled past the roots. The roots then pick up whatever nourishment they can out of the water, and the water keeps flowing. And you look at the next tree, and it's doing a very similar thing. You see that the pipe structure is the same, and the leaves are a little bit different, but in general it's the same structure. You hear this. The figure seems to have begun walking again. Climb down, shimmy down a bit, follow them again. And at first these trees just kind of grow next to each other. But getting further into the forest, it becomes more and more dense as the trees become huge, the pipes become huge as well. The trees don't change drastically. What does change drastically is how closely they are together, as it becomes difficult to tell which tree is which anymore. You see the trunks going up, but as the roots kind of swirl and gnarl everywhere, it's this tangled mess. Wires just kind of taut and hanging across everywhere. Kind of have to pull your way through. There's not very many leaves down here, but the entire top is covered by the boughs of these metal leaves. And even you have difficulty here, because while you're not directly touched by any of the pieces, you're still somehow tethered to this world. And so you have to climb over the pipes, and you have to like duck under the wires and make sure that you get through. and it becomes denser and denser, and even at the point that you think this can't possibly be, the tree's already so close together and there's just so much stuff that it's almost impossible to continue forward. You watch as they just continue getting denser until ahead of you it's almost like it's just a wall of pipes growing upwards. And above you the canopy is way high up. Beforehand it was a few meters up, as you expect from trees that you've experienced so far. Here the canopy is 30, 40, 50 meters up, and you don't know that's the bottom of the leaves, it's not the top. But you continue forward through this metal. Everything is metal, and you see some wildlife. You see like a squirrel made from a million tiny gears. Looking at the larger gears that kind of make up the structure of it, behind them you can see even tinier gears as the entire thing is made of clockwork. And partway through you see, I think you see a cat of kind. Not sure, kind of, it's like a leopard or a lynx maybe, but it's really hard to tell. Because in this darkness, just as it swooshes by, you think you see the shape of it, but it's just gone again. And you see mice and other rodents, and partway through you see something that kind of resembles a deer for a moment before it bounds off. But it has like an exoskeleton, which connects to its antlers, which are made of what looks like, they're like sword blades, but they're twisted and pulled to make this angle pattern. As it kind of swooshes its head to run off, and it cuts through a bunch of the wires with the antlers. It doesn't necessarily, it pulls them a bit and then snaps through them with the antlers. And you see that the antlers kind of go towards the head, but you watch as they kind of also continue forward and down the sides of the neck and back down the back before it bounds off into the distance. And you're not entirely sure how it makes it through this tangled mass of everything. Oh, what's happening to my camera? Okay, that's better. Not sure what happened there. And you see all sorts of forms of wildlife. There's birds of different kinds that swoop through here, and you see something that resembles a bat. You also see things that you don't recognize, really. There is some kind of lizard, maybe, but strangely, it doesn't have 4 legs on the bottom/side. It has 8 legs that just kind of go off at different angles. As it moves, it just kind of rotates around its central axis, as if there's like the center of the lizard with the tail going outward, and it kind of spins when it moves. And then eventually it becomes too difficult to reasonably make your way forward any further. And as you get further and further into this tangled mess of a jungle, into the wild, you understand why it's called the wild now. There's nothing getting through here. And just as you're thinking that there's no way to get through here, you see as the figure ahead of you, which has also stopped, turns its head up very dramatically, and you automatically follow the view as well. And the gaze goes upwards to the treetops where, similarly to the previous time with the cat figure that you thought you saw, you see a bunch of moving figures going through the branches. And through the treetops. They're all over the place until eventually suddenly you hear a sound behind you, and you turn just as the figure does, and behind you see a cat-like creature, as you'd expected. Kind of lynx looking, very, bobcat or lynx-esque, with this kind of hairy face, these spiked ears, and 6 legs. As it's currently standing on all 6. And then it kind of rolls its back up a little bit so that the front 2 paws are off the ground and the back 4 are still holding it. And in that position, a little bit strangely, the upper half looking kind of meerkat-esque when it does that. It then kind of turns its head to the figure that's standing there, not noticing you so far. Turns its head back, moves back towards a tree, slower this time, kind of beckons its head. and over to one of the pipes on one of the trees densely close together. But here you see you hadn't noticed this before, but now that it walks over to it and it begins climbing up it, its claws dig slightly into the pipe, and with that you can tell that this can climb anywhere. But this pipe is different from the other ones that you had walked past. This tree and the pipes that it had notches for handholds. You watch as the figure kind of walks up, and it lifts its huge hand and tries to grab onto one of the notches and realizes that isn't going to work. And it kind of holds its hand, kind of, and then as it folds it back, you watch as like a different hand kind of pops out from the armor, and it rotates them past so that there's this smaller, more dainty hand, kind of, to hold with. With that, it grasps, it holds on. No longer this vice grip, but more humanoid hands, definitely much smaller, which look very strange on the massive bulk that is the rest of this body. And then as it waits for a moment, it kind of stomps its feet 2 times in a very unique way, and some semblance of like a hook comes out the bottom to grasp on with, and begins climbing the tree. Partway through, it activates the hydraulics on the arms to pull it up faster, as this metal is definitely heavy, and sometimes it just needs the extra power. And then, as you reach the top, there's a bit of a platform. It's not directly, it's just that the pipes at the top here are no longer round necessarily. There's portions where it looks like it's been hammered down to make a flat portion of the pipe. It's not been extended in any way, but the pipes are large enough in these trees here due to their sheer size that it's easy to stand here.